House of the Dragon, episode 5. I think there was kind of a perfect summation of my thoughts of even the show up until this point from Kayla right at the last shot of this episode. I won't spoil what that was, but she just looked at the imagery presented and said, bit on the nose. And I was like, wow, I really loved that episode. To which she was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Great episode. There's just some things that are a bit on the nose. And so we both love this show, but if there was going to be people who didn't, the smaller, as I've seen online, percentage of people who haven't been a fan of House of the Dragon, I could see why in the case of there's certain beats within this episode, especially where dialogue or character choices are happening because it moves the plot forward really quickly and they want to get from A to Z by the end of the season and they need things to move right on along. And if your personal taste happens to be a specific type, I think that could drive you nuts. For me personally, I acknowledge that one weakness and think it is more than made up for by pretty much every other element of this show and specifically episode 5. Getting like slightly more specific without getting into spoilers still, there is an accusation made against Daemon in this episode, and the way it's delivered, I was like, that is extremely on the nose. And even if this person wanted to make a big grandiose appeal and have what they say be on like the record, so to speak, saying what they're saying in front of certain people, it's still so blunt that I was just like, wow. But the acting from Matt Smith and the person accusing and just the setup tension shots around it make it so that it still elevates to a point where I'm like, this is spectacular. And yeah, there's maybe a little bit too going on, but I don't mind it because it's just so well executed overall. This is either my third or fourth favorite episode so far, and let's go ahead and get into the spoiler-filled section. So this episode opens up with us finally meeting Matt Smith's wife, and she's not gonna get too much screen time, it turns out. He murders her in a quite brutal way, and that one line from her though, where she says, "I knew you couldn't finish," was just... And like clearly already we know Daemon is a villain. He's not someone who's moral by any stretch of the imagination, but this was the episode where I think we finally had him narratively positioned. And I think, again, the performance, the execution from Matt Smith, and honestly, the costuming and cinematography around this character. I even tweeted this out while in the middle of watching this show because I was just like, oh my god, everyone looks so freaking stunning. From the people who are supposed to look grandiose and magnificent, to the wedding dress, to those who are supposed to be just in the background looking like average everyday people. My god, I hope these people are paid well and employed for the rest of their lives in this industry because their work, at least from me as a fan, unbelievably appreciated. All right, but getting into the actual wedding and the build up to the wedding here. The king has decided that he will do away with much of his political woes and have Rhaenyra marry into the house that he kind of maybe disrespected when he took his wife. Though that feels weird to say because, you know, that disrespect came through turning down marriage to a child. Just on the ship ride to the castle to arrange this marriage, there is so much done to push forward this story. Not only do we see the king's illness is obviously getting to a point where he's near death, but it isn't accomplished in like a cheap or easy way where we're just seeing like the big scars that's held for later. He's actually just seasick, but the way that it's combined with his condition and how people react around him really just put in your mind as the viewer that this king is in a horrendously weakened state. And despite this not necessarily being the king's episode, the acting from this actor stole the show. Viserys is so human in his flaws, his errors, the way he's so concerned about his own image, the love around him. It all just comes together to make him a flawed man and bad king that you can't help but relate to in some messed up ways. Once we get into the Hall of the Nine from there, not only do we see a certain mask in the back that I was like, hey, your screen time's been extended, but Lady Rhaenys arrives and there's this beat between the two actors where there's like respect shown, yet an understanding of the insults that have had to be healed over the years. And I just love when so much communication can happen without words between two characters because one, information the audience has already been told, two, the quality of acting on display. King Viserys learns not only of Daemon's wife's death, but they do successfully arrange this marriage. And then we have probably the most politically hyper-focused episode of House of the Dragon yet, that absolutely feels like the highest quality of the political-focused episodes from Game of Thrones. Jumping back a little bit, Hightower's warning for his daughter as well. It's just this like gut punch for so much darkness ahead, and foreshadowing while being a bit more than just foreshadowing. It just felt like a perfect adaptation moment for me. I was appreciating, as someone who does really enjoy this world, love this story, how well it all came together to make me feel how reading the material made me feel. Information is thrown about. The queen learns that Rhaenyra did not lie to her in one way, but certainly withheld certain information that just pits her absolutely against Rhaenyra, and watching all the pieces on the chessboard come to lie where they are just before what we're about to get, obviously, as fans, if you've read the source material. If you don't know what's to come, it all feels like it could line up for a happily ever after, but you know, this is A Song of Ice and Fire. Welcome to the party. And we have the powerful, powerful entrance from the queen where she comes in wearing her war dress, and once again, I just want to say, costume designers, mwah, I love you. And there's an equally memorable entrance from Daemon, who comes in from his previous, what should be like, hey, you're not allowed to get on in here, boy. Neither of those were actually my favorite entrance, though. My favorite was of the Lannister, who it's just really nice to see the continuation of every Lannister is a pompous ass, and they managed to make you feel that way so effortlessly with this character due to casting and dialogue, and well done. I love a grand or sassy entrance, and we got those in abundance. And this all leads to what feels like a crescendo for so many strings weaving together, where there's some violence that breaks out, and you as the audience are actually kind of left in the dark for what exactly is happening in that moment for a surprisingly long amount of time, because what the camera is trying to communicate to you is obviously a bit of a deception, where it's some kind of conflict between Daemon and Rhaenyra. But in actuality, it's Rhaenyra's side piece and Lanor, however you say his name's side piece. And for some reason, Rhaenyra's protector murders the hell out of this guy in some fantastic gore effects. And the way the confusion and panic was captured genuinely gave me some anxiety. I've been in situations with crowds where it started to feel like, whoa, I don't feel safe anymore. And that kind of feeling was just captured in this panic. This takes us to our final sequence, where we have this wedding at a crime scene. The two are joined, and we see a rat come and drink from some blood. That's what made Kayla go, bit on the nose, and I agree, but they pull off the bit on the nose. And if you've read the source material, there's actually a pretty big divergence from it in the execution of this plot beat, and I think it's genuinely an improvement. I'm curious to see if people agree with me on that or not, but making this a more malicious act, something that has more impact for me as a consumer, I think is going to pay off not only in this moment, but for the grander story of the season, and does more justice for the characters. I don't think I could be better set up for the time jump we are about to get. Saying goodbye to the actresses behind Alicent and Rhaenyra almost feels painful, like they've done such a good job, but I've also seen how quality the casting seems to continuously be for the show, plus how similar the actresses who are going to be the aged up version of these characters look. I'm just excited now to see what more can be brought to the table. I'm so full as a fan, yet more keeps being offered. The rewatchability on display here is powerful. Overall, I'm giving this episode another solid 8.5. This show is dangerously close for pushing into that 9 to 10 territory for me. It just needs to not waver on the really solid foundations it's set up as we're getting into the latter half of the episodes. And it just feels good to have a show on right now where it seems to be like uniting fantasy fans and just saying like, I'm happy. But that was just my thoughts on episode 5 of House of the Dragon. Let me know yours in the comments down below. I'm sorry I haven't gotten to the Rings of Power episode 4 or 5 review yet. I was at a wedding this weekend and just didn't have time to watch it. I will be getting that to you later today. Anyway though, like and subscribe if you have not already, and hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. I got books, I got merch, I got a goblin right there. Love him to death. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.